Carter had only been on Zalari Prime for 3 weeks. The air smelled strange, the sky had 3 moons, and the food made his stomach flip. Still, it beat being on a dusty cargo hauler back in human space. His job was simple: check old tech. Ruins, scan them, and report back. No one said anything about glowing symbols or ancient alien customs. On that day, Carter entered an old stone chamber near the cliffs. The place was quiet, filled with odd carvings and old machines that looked dead for centuries. He held his scanner up, blinking as it gave off soft beeps. He walked past a cracked wall and saw a strange symbol glowing faintly. It looked like a flower mixed with a spiral, probably just decorative. He muttered and touched it without thinking. The symbol lit up bright blue. Carter jumped back, almost falling over. The wall shimmered for a moment, then the light faded. His scanner went crazy with noise, then stopped. Nothing else happened? Weird, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. He left the chamber, made a quick note in his log, and moved on, back at the base. Something unexpected happened. Princess Liza, a Zalari warrior known for her cold temper, an unmatched blade skill, stood still in the middle of her training ground. Her eyes widened as a burning sensation spread across the mark on her collarbone, a mark she was born with. It glowed bright, something it had never done before. Her heart pounded. She had never thought the bond would trigger, especially not like this. This can't be, she whispered. The elders were called. After checking the ancient systems, they confirmed it. The bond had been activated. The mark had chosen. Who? She asked, her voice steady but cold. An elder turned toward her. A human. His name is Carter. Later that evening, Carter was eating a dull meal in the mess hall when 2 tall Zalari guards entered and called his name. Confused and still chewing, he stood up. Yeah, you must come. The princess demands your presence." "What? Why?" "They didn't." Answer: "They just marched him out." Minutes later, he stood in front of Liza in the royal hall. The room was large, filled with golden lines and tall windows. Shh! She stared at him with unreadable eyes. "You touched the mark," she said firmly. What mark?" "The sacred one in the cliff ruins." "Oh, that was yours." She nodded once. "It triggered the mating bond. We are now linked." Carter blinked. "Wait, hold on. What do you mean linked? Like ... dating?" "No, stronger. It is a life bond." Carter looked around the room, hoping someone would explain this was a joke. No one laughed. "This is a mistake," he said. "I didn't mean to touch anything important. Intent does not matter. Once the bond is sealed, it cannot be undone, unless proven false." "False? How, if you are found unworthy?" Carter groaned. "Great. So now I'm in some cosmic relationship test with an alien princess because I touched a glowing wall, correct?" He let out a long sigh. This day just keeps getting better. The next morning, Carter was brought before the Zalari Council. 10 elders in long robes looked down at him from their high seats. Liza stood near them, silent, her face calm. An elder spoke.
"Human Carter?"
"You activated a Zalari mating mark. Our laws are clear. The bond must be tested. You have 1 moon cycle to prove you are worthy. If you fail, you will be cast out and the bond broken. If you succeed, you will remain by her side." Carter raised his hand like a schoolboy. "Does cast out mean exactly? You will be removed from this world, and any connection to our kind will be erased?" Ouch. The council nodded and dismissed him. Outside the chamber, Liza walked beside him in silence. "Look, Carter," said, "I didn't mean to mess up your life. This isn't fair to either of us." She stopped walking. "I thought the bond would never activate. I trained for war, not love. But now tradition binds me to this. So what do we do?" he asked. "We start the trial." That night, Carter was moved into a small guest chamber near the royal quarters. He couldn't sleep. Thoughts spun in his mind like a broken fan. He had just wanted to scan old tech, maybe impress a few commanders and finish his contract. Now, he was part of some ancient Zalari custom, bound to a princess he barely knew. The next morning, he found himself standing in training grounds with Liza. She tossed him a practice blade. We begin with skill. I'm terrible at this. Carter said. Learn. He swung, missed, and fell.
Liza didn't laugh.
She helped him up and showed him the right stance. They trained until his arms felt like noodles. She said little, but he could feel her watching him closely. After training, they walked through the palace gardens. Liza explained the bond further. The mark chooses not just from bloodlines. It seeks heart, bravery, truth. So you think I might have some of that? You touched the mark. Now it waits to see. As they reached the fountain, Carter looked at her carefully. She stood tall, graceful, with violet skin and silver eyes. She wasn't just a warrior. She was lonely. She carried duty like a shield. I may not be brave, Carter said, but I'll try. Not just for your people, but for you. Turned slightly, something softened in her gaze. We shall see, human, she whispered. Carter's arms were sore, his legs hurt, and his pride was even worse off. But every morning, he still showed up at the training grounds. Liza never went easy on him. She moved with sharp grace, every step perfect. Her blade sang through the air while his own swings were clumsy and slow. You're improving, she said one morning, handing him a towel after training. He wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. That means a lot coming from someone who knocks me down 10 times. A day, she tilted her head. 11, actually, he groaned. Figures. Despite the rough starts, the bond between them was changing. They still didn't understand each other fully, but Carter started to see little things. The way Liza never looked away during a fight. How she took time to teach, even when others watched and whispered. Liza noticed too. Carter didn't complain much, even when injured. He laughed at himself, made others laugh, and never gave up. But things weren't easy. News of their bond had spread across the capital. Many Zalari nobles whispered behind their backs. Some said the mark had failed. Others said a human was not fit for a warrior princess. One night, Carter sat alone near the fire in the palace courtyard. A young Zalari boy, no more than 10, sat beside him. Are you really the chosen one? The boy asked. Carter looked up. I guess that depends who you ask. My sister says the mark picked you, but my uncle says you're a joke. Carter laughed softly. Both could be true. The boy stared at him for a moment. Do you like her? Carter blinked. Princess Liza. The boy nodded. Carter thought about it. I didn't plan any of this, but yeah, I respect her. She's strong, smart, and way too serious. She needs someone to make her smile, the boy said, then ran off the next morning. The council summoned Carter and Liza for the next part of the trial. They were to leave the capital and travel to the wild borderlands to help with a local dispute. Bandits had been attacking Zalari caravans, and the people were scared. This mission would test more than strength. It would test leadership, decision-making, and how well they worked as a team. As they boarded a skiff, Liza spoke. This mission is not just for the trial. The people are in danger. We cannot fail. Carter nodded. Then let's not. The journey took a full day. They arrived at a small outpost near a river. Buildings were made of stone and cloth, and Zalari guards stood tired and alert. Captain Noreen, a tall female commander, greeted them. Bandits hit us 2 nights ago, she explained. We've lost food, tools, even medicines. Liza stepped forward. Show us where they attacked. As they walked the path, Carter noticed tracks. Though not a soldier, he had spent years in tech fields and desert zones. Something about the trail felt off. These don't look like bandits, he said quietly. Too neat, too planned. Liza glanced down. Go on, see these patterns? They used cover and moved in formation. This was a trained group. Liza studied the tracks again. She began to suspect the same. That night, they stayed in the outpost. Carter and Liza sat near a low fire, sharing a quiet meal. You learn fast, she said. Guess I had a good teacher. For a moment, her lips twitched, almost a smile. You are different from other humans I've met, she added. Good. Different. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. Before sunrise, alarms rang out. They were under attack. Carter grabbed his blade and ran beside Liza to the walls. Dark figures moved through the fog. These weren't common thieves, they wore gear, moved in sync, and aimed to break through quickly. Liza shouted orders in her native tongue. Carter stayed by her side, helping civilians escape and defending the weak points. A young Zalari girl almost got caught in the chaos, but Carter pulled her to safety, shielding her with his own body. The fight was hard, but together Liza and Carter pushed back the attackers. By dawn, the enemy fled, leaving behind only weapons and a few captured members. The people cheered. Carter sat down, panting, bruised, and exhausted. Liza approached him, her blade still in hand. "You did well," she said. "I didn't die," he replied with a grin. "That's a win." She looked at him for a long moment. "You protected the child, even when it meant putting yourself in danger. What else was I supposed to do?" She said nothing more but sat beside him. It was the first time she had ever sat so close. Back at the capital, word of their success spread fast. The nobles were not pleased. Some began to speak in secret, angry that a human was starting to gain respect among the people. One noble, Lord Thraven, met with two others. In a shadowed hall, "He is winning the hearts of the crowd," Thraven said. "If this continues, the bond will be accepted." "We can't allow that," another replied. "The mark should never belong to an outsider." They began to plot. If the human couldn't be disqualified by the trial, perhaps he could be removed. Back in her private chamber, Liza stood near her window, staring at the sky. Her mark still glowed faintly, warm and calm. "You confuse me, human," she whispered at the same time. Carter looked at the same sky from his room. "I think I'm actually falling for her," he muttered. Neither knew what the next trial would bring, but both were beginning to feel something that no ancient bond could force real connection. 3 days had passed since the battle in the borderlands. The people now looked at Carter with new eyes. They no longer saw just a clumsy outsider. They saw someone who had stood beside their princess and fought without fear. Carter walked through the capital's open market, taking in the colors and smells. Alien fruits, bright fabrics, and strange spices filled the air. As he passed by, some Zalari nodded at him, politely. One even said, "Honor to your bond." With a respectful bow, he still wasn't sure how to respond to that. In the royal training yard, Liza practiced alone. Her movements were sharp, like blades cutting through silence. When Carter arrived, she didn't stop. "I heard you beat the training bots again," he said, sitting on a nearby bench. "They're slow," she replied without turning. "So am I." "Yes," she said with a tiny smirk. "But you improve," Carter chuckled. "Thanks, I think." After a moment, she paused her training and sat beside him. They sat in silence, the bond between them unspoken but not ignored. "Why do you keep trying?" she asked suddenly. "Most would give up." Carter looked at her. "Because the bond wasn't your choice, and you deserve someone who won't run away." Her silver eyes searched his face for truth. She found it there, before either could say more, a royal guard arrived. "Princess Liza, council summons you both, immediately." Inside the council chamber, 10 elders waited. Their expressions were serious. Elder Kamari stepped forward. "You have passed the second test. The people speak well of you, human." Nodded politely. "Thank you. But the final trial approaches. This one will test your bond itself." Carter raised an eyebrow. How Elder Kamari looked at Liza. "You will enter the deep forest of Mordecai. It is sacred ground. The mark's true strength reveals itself there. You will face illusions, memories, fears. If your bond is weak, it will break. Strong, it will survive." Carter swallowed hard. Sounds ... fun. That night, Liza prepared 2 small packs. Carter helped, though he had no idea what to expect in the forest. Before leaving, she handed him a small dagger. "This belonged to my brother," she said. "He died in the Mordecai forest. Use it if you must." Carter held it carefully. "Thank you. I won't lose it." They entered the forest at dawn. Air was thick with fog and strange scents. Tall trees with glowing leaves surrounded them. The path shifted as they walked, almost like the forest was alive. After hours of silence, Liza finally spoke. "This place is not like others. It touches the mind." Carter nodded. "I can feel it. It's heavy." As they moved deeper, things began to change. Shadows moved in the corners. Distant whispers filled the air. Carter thought he saw someone behind a tree, but when he turned, no one was there. They made camp near a small stream. As night fell, the forest grew darker, not just in color, but in feeling. Dreams crept into their minds, even while they were awake. Carter woke in the middle of the night, breathing hard. He'd seen his home on fire, his family calling for help, and himself frozen, unable to move. Liza sat nearby, staring into the dark. "You too?" he asked. She nodded. "My mother. Saw her again. Is this the trial?" "Yes, it will get worse." The next day, they continued their path. At one point, Carter heard someone call his name. He looked and saw his old commander from Earth. "You don't belong here, Carter," the vision said. "You're just playing hero. You're not." "Riel," Carter muttered. The figure smiled. "Neither is this Bond. She pities you." Carter gritted his teeth. "Shut up." He turned away and kept walking. Later, Liza stopped walking. Her eyes were wide, her body shaking. "Liza," Carter asked, stepping closer. "He's here," she whispered. "My brother." "I can hear him. It's not real," Carter said gently. "But it feels real." Carter reached out and touched her shoulder. "I'm here. Whatever you see, it's not stronger than us." Slowly, she nodded, as night fell again. The forest gave them one final challenge. They stood in a clearing, surrounded by mist. Suddenly, a giant creature stepped out. Its body was made of light and shadow, its eyes glowing. "You are not bonded," it boomed. "You are a mistake." Liza raised her blade. Carter stepped beside her. "We didn't choose this," Carter said, voice steady. "But we didn't run either." The creature stepped closer. "Prove your bond. Show truth." Carter looked at Liza. "If we fail, I'm sorry." She turned to him. "No, not sorry. Grateful." Together, they walked toward the creature. As they did, their marks began to glow. Carter's chest burned with heat, and Liz's mark shined like a star. The creature let out a loud cry, then faded into the mist. Silence. The forest cleared. The fog lifted. They were alone again. The bond had passed the test. Carter dropped to his knees, breathing hard. "That was the worst therapy session of my life." Liza laughed. It was soft, real, and surprised even her. "You're still with me?" she said. Double quotes. "Yeah," he replied. "It turns out I don't like quitting." She helped him stand, her hand warm in his. Together, they walked out of the forest bonded not just by fate, but by choice. The return from the forest of Morokai was quiet at first. Neither Carter nor Liza spoke much as they rowed the transport skiff back to the capital. Their thoughts were heavy, but their hearts felt lighter. They had survived the forest, passed. The final trial and their bond had been proven true in the eyes of the ancient spirits as the city came into view. They saw something unexpected: people waiting. Zelari citizens stood near the palace gates, watching with curiosity and whispers. Many bowed their heads as Carter and Liza stepped down from the skiff. A young girl stepped forward and handed Liza a small flower. "Welcome home." "Ow." "Bonded one," the girl said. Liza looked surprised, but she accepted the gift with grace. Carter smiled softly. Something had changed. The people were beginning to accept him. Inside the royal court, the council stood ready. Elder Kamari stepped forward with a proud expression. "You have returned from Morokai with the bond intact. Your connection is now accepted by law, by tradition, and by the spirits." Liza gave a small nod. Komar looked at Carter. "You have proven yourself human. The trials are complete." Carter bowed. "Thank you. I didn't understand your customs before, but now I respect them." Cheers erupted. Quietly in the chamber, but not all were pleased. Hidden among the nobles, Lord Thraven's face remained cold. His plan to remove the human had failed. Now, he had to act differently. Quietly as the days passed, Carter and Liza were given a few moments of peace. Trained together in the mornings, shared meals in the evenings, and began to talk more openly. "What did you see in the forest?" Liza asked one night, as they sat on the palace roof under the moons. "Memories of failure," Carter replied. "Voices telling me I wasn't enough, and yet you stayed." "Because of you," she turned toward him. "I saw my brother. He told me to let go, to live again, I think. I'm finally listening." The space between them felt warmer. Now, no longer forced by tradition, but held by trust. But their peace didn't last. One morning, during a public speech from the council, an explosion shook the Capitol Square. Smoke filled the air. Guards rushed forward. Carter grabbed Liza and pulled her behind a wall, protecting her from falling debris. Shouts rang out. Panic spread from a rooftop. Masked attackers fired energy bolts. Their armor was not Zellery-made. It was foreign. Carter and Liza fought side by side, pushing back the attackers until the guards took control. When it was over, 5 were injured, and 1 elder was badly hurt in the council chamber. Leaders debated in anger. "This was no random attack," Elder Kamari said. "Someone planned this. Someone who doesn't want the bond to succeed." Another added. Eyes turned toward the nobles. Carter stood up. "We need to find out who did this, before it happens again." The council agreed. Liza and Carter were granted full permission to investigate later that night. While reviewing footage from the city's security systems, Carter noticed something strange. One of the attackers had removed their mask just before vanishing into the crowd. The face was familiar. He had seen it in the palace before. He pointed at the screen. "That's one of the noble guards." Liz's eyes narrowed. "Then the traitor is inside the palace." The next morning, they visited the lower levels of the city, where old tunnels ran beneath the Capitol. Liza believed the attackers had used them to escape. Carter followed her carefully, flashlight in hand. "These tunnels remind me of old mining shafts on Mars. These were built during the first age of Zellery kings," she said. "It's mostly forgotten now. They found signs of movement, footprints, empty crates, pieces of strange armor. We're hiding here," Carter said. Suddenly they heard footsteps behind them. Liza drew her blade. Carter raised his light. 3 masked figures appeared, ready to strike. The fight was quick and fierce. Liza moved like lightning, cutting down 2. With ease, the third tried to flee, but Carter tackled him to the ground. They removed the mask. It was one of Lord Thraven's guards. Back at the palace, the council met in secret. Evidence was clear. Lord Thraven had funded the attackers, hoping to cause chaos, blame Carter, and force the bond to be dissolved. Comer turned to Thraven. "You have broken our laws." Thraven didn't argue. He only glared at Carter and Liza. "This bond will break you in time. Humans do not belong here." Guards removed him from the chamber. Outside, the people learned the truth. Many were angry. Some were ashamed, but most were thankful the bond had held through it all. As Carter and Liza walked the palace gardens later that evening, they were quiet. "You were right," Liza said. "This bond started by accident. But now, I would not undo it even if I could." Carter looked at her. "Neither would I." She took his hand for the first time, her fingers firm but gentle. The night breeze moved through the trees. Above them, the moons of Zellery Prime glowed softly. And in that moment, they both knew this bond was no longer just a mark on the skin, that it was something real. For the first time since the bond began, peace finally settled over Carter and Liz's lives. Lord Thraven had been removed, and the people of Zellery Prime started to look at Carter with less doubt and more respect. Children waved to him in the streets. Market vendors offered him samples with smiles. Even the royal guards, once cold and distant, now greeted him with quiet nods. Carter didn't know if he had truly earned their trust, but he had earned something. A place. His days followed a calm rhythm. Mornings were filled with training beside Liza. Afternoons involved helping engineers repair old tech systems around the city. And evenings. those were the best. He and Liza would walk through the gardens or sit by the fire pit, sometimes in silence, sometimes laughing. The bond no longer felt like a trap. It felt like something they both chose. One afternoon, while walking through the city's learning halls, Carter noticed a group of young Zalari students watching a holographic lesson about human and Zalari history. He paused as the teacher mentioned the ancient mark and how it had only activated once. Between the two species in, Carter and Liza, a small boy turned and pointed. "That's him, the human." Carter smiled awkwardly. "Yep, that's me." The kids swarmed him with questions. "Did it hurt? Do you have powers now? Are you going to become king?" "No powers," Carter laughed, "and definitely not a king." Meanwhile, inside the royal halls, Liza sat with Elder Kamari. The old woman studied her quietly. "You have changed, Princess," Kamari said. "I feel different," Liza admitted. "Not weaker, not softer, just clearer. Because your heart now sees." Liza looked down at her mark. It still glowed softly when she thought of Carter. Right. It was supposed to be a mistake. "Maybe it was fate in disguise," Kamari replied. But not everyone had moved on, far beyond the capital. In a private fortress, hidden in the stone mountains, a figure watched a screen showing images of Carter and Liza walking together. The bond survived the forest, the council, and even betrayal, the voice said. But can it survive what's coming? This figure wasn't a noble. He was something worse, a former Zalari war general, cast out after the peace treaties were signed. He believed the bond was poison, a sign of weakness that would break there. "Proud people, ready the ancient device," he ordered. "We destroy the source of the mark. If they are connected by it, we break the connection." Back in the palace, Carter woke suddenly in the middle of the night. His mark was burning, not painfully, but strongly. It pulsed. He looked over at Liza. She was already awake, touching her own mark. "Something's wrong," she whispered. The next morning, a large energy wave struck the outer cities. Strange storms formed in the sky. Lights flickered. Systems failed. And deep underground, the ancient temple where Carter had first touched the symbol began to shake. The council gathered. In emergency session, elders, scientists, and commanders filled the hall. "This is no natural event," Elder Kamari said. "This is an attack." Liza stepped forward, targeting the bond itself. Carter's eyes widened. "The mark," technician explained. "The bond's energy is rooted in ancient structures beneath Zalari Prime. Someone is trying to destroy them." Carter looked at Liza. "We have to stop them," she nodded. "We go together." They were given a small team and a fast transport. The location of the energy disturbance was near the edge of the old war zone's places, still dangerous and mostly abandoned. As they flew over the rough terrain, Carter looked down and saw dark clouds swirling above ruined cities. "This place doesn't look friendly," he muttered. Liza handed him his blade. "Stay close." When they arrived at the ancient site, they found a massive machine pulsing with red energy. It was connected to the temple, stone draining it. They stepped out of the ship. Weapons ready, the ex-general stood waiting. "Princess Liza," he said, "and the human mistake." "Stop this," Liza demanded. "You think peace is strength," he spat. "You think bonding with an outsider will save us, but it will break us." "You're wrong," Carter said, stepping forward. "We are. Stronger now. It's not because we're the same, but because we're different together." The general raised a hand. "Then prove it. Stop me." His soldiers attacked. Carter and Liza fought side by side as they had in the forest and in battle. Before, Carter used the blade Liza gave him, blocking and moving with more skill than ever. Liza moved like a storm calm, sharp, unstoppable, together. They reached the machine, but the general stood in their way, holding a control rod. "If I press this," he said, "your bond ends, and your lives may end too." Carter stepped forward. "Slowly, then press it. If we die together." "But you won't win," the general hesitated. Lysia raised her voice. This bond has already faced fear, lies, and doubt. We have walked through every test. We are not afraid. Suddenly, the marks on their skin flared with light. The machine crackled. The general shouted, trying to control it, but it was too late. A shockwave burst outward, knocking everyone to the ground. When the light faded, the machine was destroyed. The temple was quiet. The bond remained. The general lay on the ground, defeated. Carter helped Liza up. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "Yes, and you? Still stuck with you?" he said. With a tired grin, she smiled, truly smiled.
Then we are both lucky.
The journey back to the capital was quiet. Carter sat beside Liza in the transport ship, both of them covered in dust and small cuts. Their bond mark no longer glowed wildly, but a gentle warmth stayed in their skin, pulsing like a steady heartbeat. The ancient machine had been destroyed. The ex-general was now a prisoner. The danger was over. For now, as the city came into view, Carter leaned back and closed his eyes. "Do you think the council will be angry we blew up their ancient temple?" Liza gave him a sideways look. "Blew it up. I just helped." He grinned. "So, I take all the blame and half the credit." When they landed, a crowd waited at the palace gate, nobles, soldiers, citizens, and even children. Elder Kamari stood at the front holding her staff. She stepped forward as Liza and Carter exited the ship. "You both have done more than prove your bond. You've protected our world, our people, and something far older than tradition." The crowd clapped. Some even cheered. Carter looked around nervously. "They're not throwing stones."
That's
"A good sign." Lisa stood tall, but her eyes softened. "They see you now, truly." Later that day, the council held a ceremony. Not a grand one, but something meaningful. It was a mix of Zelari and human customs, simple robes, soft lights, and calm music from both cultures. Koma. Ri spoke as the two stood before her. Long ago, the mating mark was only a symbol one that bound warriors and their chosen. But today, it has become something more. This bond began by accident, grew through trial, and now stands by choice. Liza turned to Carter. "I thought the mark had chosen wrong. I thought you were weak, foolish, lost. But each time I doubted, you showed strength in power, but in heart. And that was something I had forgotten to value." Carter swallowed, eyes on hers. "I didn't come here to fall in love," he said. "I came to scan walls and avoid getting fired. But you made me better, stronger, and I wouldn't change anything. Even the mistake that started this." There, hands met in the center. The bond marks glowed softly. The crowd stayed silent, respectful. Then Kamari smiled. "Let this be known, your bond is recognized by spirit, law, and your own will." After the ceremony, Carter and Liza walked through the palace gardens. The moons hung low in the sky. The stars above seemed brighter, so Carter said, "What now? Do we just live happily ever after?" "Not yet," Liza replied. "You still have much to learn." "Like what?" "How to fight properly, how to speak Zelari better, and how to not trip over ceremonial robes." Carter laughed. "Okay, that last one is impossible." She smiled and took his hand again, "But we'll learn together." A few days later, Carter was called to the engineering bay. The human team on Zelari Prime had finished building a new scanner gift to the Zelari, combining both human and Zelari tech. Carter helped design part of it as they activated the device. It sent out a harmless energy pulse that reached across the temple grounds. What it revealed shocked everyone beneath. The surface, deep under the ruined temple, was a hidden chamber. "We missed this before," one engineer said. Completely hidden, Carter and Liza were sent to investigate. Together, they walked down into the stone tunnel. The air felt ancient. The chamber was round, filled with carvings. In the center was a pedestal with a strange crystal glowing. Softly, Liza stepped closer. "This is older than even the bond traditions." Carter studied the carvings. They show humans and Zelari standing side by side, Not fighting, not ruling, just equal. They stared at the images. Maybe the mark wasn't just a bond between mates, Carter said.
Maybe.
Was meant to connect our kinds. Liza nodded slowly. A bridge between two worlds. They didn't take the crystal. They left it untouched, as a symbol of something older. Something still sacred. Outside, the sun rose over Zellery Prime. A few weeks passed. Peace returned. The people spoke of the bond with pride now. Carter was no longer called the outsider. He was the bonded one, protector, and to some kids, even a hero. But he didn't care about the titles. What mattered most was the quiet smile from Liza during morning training, the way she listened when he spoke, the moments they shared that needed no words. One morning, Carter found a message from Earth Command. His service contract was ending. He could return home, be reassigned. He read the message twice. Then he looked at Liza across the courtyard, practicing her blade alone under the twin suns. He walked over and handed her the tablet. "They want me to come back," he said. "And will you?" she asked calmly. He thought for a moment. "I think I'm already where I belong." Liza didn't reply, but her eyes softened. She stepped closer, touched the bond mark on his chest, and whispered, "Then stay. Not because the mark says so, but because you want to." Carter smiled. "I do." The mark glowed once more, not because of duty or trial, but because of real choice. From that day on, Carter and Liza worked together not just as bonded partners, but as builders of a new future. They traveled to other cities, taught humans and Zellery to understand each other, and reminded both sides that sometimes what begins as an accident becomes the most powerful connection of all.